Well, thanks very much indeed. Welcome to the show. I am Jim Ferguson. I've got a good friend to the channel again, Godfrey Bloom, back in for another discussion about lots of interesting things. Hello, Godfrey. It's great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me back on. I don't get invited back to many places.
We always have great conversations. I don't believe that for 1 minute. I know how popular you are. So, when we were doing the last meeting, we're going to pin this one to this particular interview so people can go back and have a look at that. But sort of in the last 3/4 of the segment, we're talking about gold and silver. And I thought it would be great to get you back on for a discussion on why people might buy gold and silver, for one thing, the different aspects of it. And you've also got an incredibly good website. So first of all, a lot of people might think that the concept of buying gold coins or silver coins or even gold bullion is purely the domain of the super wealthy, but that's not actually the case, is it, Godfrey?
No, as J.P. Morgan said, and I've said this before, it bears repetition, and he said this in 1912: only gold is money. So it doesn't matter whether you're if you're a jobbing gardener or a big shot. It really doesn't matter. Money's money, and real money is gold, or arguably silver, and there's a good case to make that. Not paper. Everything else is credit. And Alistair MacLeod, who's one of the world's great gurus on this subject, I've interviewed on my website on many occasions. He says gold is money. It has been so for arguably for 2,000 years without doubt, 5,000 years de jure, as it were, or de facto rather. So anyway, gold is money, always has been, and everything else is credit. Paper money is credit. Paper money is a central bank's promise to actually make it purchase goods and services at some time. We know that doesn't happen. We know we have inflation. Maybe I must make this very clear. Gold isn't an investment. Stocks and shares and bonds are investments. Commercial property is an investment. Gold isn't an investment. And this is a mistake that a lot of people make, particularly pundits and financial journalists and the stuff who don't understand it. Gold is a preservation of wealth because it's real money. And forgive me again, I've said it 1,000 times. I show my undergraduates when I'm lecturing at universities on these matters, Austrian school economics, I show them a gold sovereign, which happens to have the date of 1905 on it. And a gold sovereign in 1905 would buy you bed and breakfast in a reasonably good London hotel or Berlin or Paris or New York. It will do the same today because its value in sterling terms today, this morning, is around about 460 quid. And in 100 years' time, it will still buy you bed and breakfast in a reasonably good London or international hotel. It's a preservation of wealth, not an investment. It isn't speculative. It does go up and down against fiat currencies, but fiat currencies tend to go down. Paper money goes down against it over the long term. Gold is for holding and stashing away. And the Americans call it stacking. So you've got to be a stacker. It doesn't matter whether you've got a few gold coins in the tea caddy or you've got a lockup with a lot of gold coins in it. If you're a relatively wealthy fellow, it's the same thing for us all because it's money. And when you come back, when you really need it, it's not for Christmas or the following Christmas. It's for when you need it, when you're old and crunchy or your children need help in years to come, young children, whatever it happens to be. It will buy you in 10 years' time or 20 years' time what it buys today. It might wobble about a bit, but don't worry about that.
Well, I mean, you know, there are different ways of buying gold. As I said at the start, there are people, maybe more of the wealthy people that will buy gold bullion bars, for example, but it's very rare that people would actually take physical possession of it. And most of the time, those types of investments are held in very secure vaults in London or New York or Europe, but you know, usually very, very secure places. But there's another school of thought on this, that if you're not actually in physical possession of the gold or the silver, then you don't really have it, because who knows? It's not that somebody would break in and steal it, but governments can act in funny ways sometimes. And I don't know. I think personally, I think that there is some merit in having coins, for example, gold coins. Now, you talked about how a sovereign could be used in Europe or in another place, or used in a hotel. I mean, if you've got a gold sovereign dated 1905, for instance, is that considered legal tender? Can you take that old gold coin and use it in a hotel in Europe somewhere?
Well, legal currency, or the currency of any country, is obviously what it may be. So it could be United States dollars if you're in America, of course, Canadian dollars if you're Canada, the euro if you're in most of Western Europe, so on and so forth, or the rupee if you're into the Indian subcontinent, and all these things. What it does do, the gold coin, is a gold sovereign is internationally recognized across the world. You could be in Peking. You could be in Shanghai. It really doesn't matter where you are. It may be that the concierge or the hotel clerk would have to go and turn that at some stage into rupees or dollars or euros, but they will accept it. It's acceptable. And the idea of money, what is money, if you want to sort of try and have a look at what is money, it's not taught in schools. What actually is it? It's a medium of exchange, and it's an acceptable medium of exchange globally, and should be for years to come. Not a credit note, which is what banknotes are. They're credit notes. So if you happen to be in a hotel in Delhi or Bombay, I can assure you that if you've got some gold cans, they'll bite your hand off, and they'll give you a better price than you'll find in London. You might find yourself in trouble with the authorities because you're not allowed to do that. But certainly, yes, it will be. And certainly, as far as the United Kingdom is concerned, for most of the viewers today, not all, but most, it's still legal tender. A gold sovereign is legal tender in law. Which means, what does that mean to the man on the Clapham omnibus, chaps like you and I? What does that mean to us? It means that you can buy it without capital gains tax, because you can't. It's not liable for capital gains tax because it's money. So it's not an investment, as I say, and the government doesn't regard it as an investment. They regard it as a store of wealth, so it's not capital gains tax liable. And when you acquire them, you don't pay tax on it. You don't pay purchase tax on it or any other form of tax on it. So that's the beauty of it. You can actually get it and stash it. And as you say, if it's just a few sovereigns, you can put it in the tea caddy, or you can put it in your, in any hidey hole you've got, as long as nobody else knows that you really have got it. I include your wayward son in that kind of thing as well. Make sure that nobody knows about it except the missus, and maybe then not even the missus. Or vice versa. If you're a lady listening to this, don't let the old man find out about it. He'll drink it. I certainly would. That's what. Now, if you've got a lot, or what is a relatively large amount, and I've been acquiring gold coins since your countryman was selling it in, I think that was 1997, for something like £250 an ounce. I've been acquiring it since then, and it means I've got quite a collection of these gold coins. Well, then they have to go to secure. I don't keep it at home. Incidentally, anybody watching this comes round and knocks me on the head that wants my gold. You won't find it here. It's not at home. It's in a lockup in London. Not a bank. Banks are part owned by the government. You can't trust them. You're more liable, as I've said this again, you're more liable to have your goods stolen by the government than anyone else. So if you accumulate a decent amount, I suggest you go in an independent lockup, and there are a number there will be one in, if you're close to your big city, whether it's Glasgow, Edinburgh, Leeds, London, doesn't matter. There will be one. It'll be state of the art. It'll be state of the art. Or if you buy it from a reputable dealer, they will, if it's a significant sum, they will keep it for you in a separate vault, marked down as yours, and it will be insured, for which they will charge you a fee. a quarterly or annual or 6 monthly fee, which will be whatever it happens to be, a couple of £100 or something like that. And they take care of all that for you. It's not to say that a vault can't be broken into and stolen by bad guys. And we know that that happened in Hatton Garden relatively only a few years ago. That was a very, very odd series of events. But it is state of the art. And I've got one in London. You need to put your handprint on it. You need to do this and do that. And you've got 3 keys and a guy comes down with you and then he goes away and you've got another key. So, oh, goodness me, it's a right performance. But as I say, it's long term. It isn't to sort of nip down and check every now and again or all the rest of it. Check it by all means by and by. It's there for when the balloon goes up. We have in our family, our saying is when the balloon goes up. And so we've got our gold coins are for when the balloon goes up. If ever we need it, money becomes worthless. And all these days I think are coming, but everybody will have their own view. And I treat it the same way as I do tinned Fray Bentos steak and kidney pies. And corned beef, and tins of sardines, other stuff that we have stashed all around the bloody place and in the garage for when things get really better. And people might think I'm a bit bonkers. Fair enough, I am a bit bonkers. But if I'm right, I'm okay. And if I'm wrong, good. I hope to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But be prepared.
I mean, my countryman that you refer to, of course, is none other than Gordon Brown, who I can't remember if he was Chancellor or if he was Prime Minister when he sold off Britain's gold. Chancellor when he was Chancellor, and I mean he sold it off at rock bottom prices. Crazy stuff. I remember when that happened, and it was just ludicrous. Certainly one of the worst prime ministers I think the country's ever had. Although Keir Starmer certainly given him a run for his money, and he's only been in office about 6 or 7 weeks. But you don't pay tax on gold, but you do on silver, don't you?
Yes, it's an anomaly. You don't pay. Let's say you buy silver Britannias, which is also coin of the realm. You have to pay VAT to get them. Nobody quite knows why. It's odd, but that's where we are. But you won't pay capital gains tax on it. You only pay VAT if you take delivery. So silver, let's just talk a little bit about silver because it's an interesting phenomenon. It's a precious metal. Silver at the moment is desperately undervalued. That's generally accepted globally. It's very, very undervalued. And the ratio with gold is something like sort of 80 to 1, and it used to be 15 to 1. So there's weird stuff. And of course, silver is an industrial metal. So it's not just a store of wealth or money. So it's slightly complex and it's more speculative and it moves much higher and much lower and quicker over a period of time. So silver is difficult, but silver coins, silver Britannias are good things to have if you don't take delivery. If you leave it with your dealer and he puts it in his vault, he can hang on to it for you and you won't pay. So you can sell it over the phone and you won't pay tax at all. You're not hit for the VAT until it's delivered at your door. And silver Britannias are more difficult to sell because there isn't sort of a punter market in it, as it were. It is if you buy it from a dealer. When you get a handful of silver Britannias and want to sell them, it's difficult. It's difficult. Whereas if you leave them with the dealer, they're jolly good things to have. And you can leave them there, and you'll pay a quarterly fee for them to look after it. It means you need quite a lot of silver coins to make that worthwhile. Otherwise, you're paying a lot for storage, and it's disproportionate. Is the word I'm looking for? Really, it's disproportionate. Gold you can sell on any high street. You can walk down the high street with a gold sovereign, and any jeweler will, or any currency trader, anybody on the high street will actually buy it. They'll buy it at a rotten price, probably. They'll probably tell it 10% below its spot value. We'll come on to that in a minute, I think, Jim. And I'll explain a bit more about that. So really, if you're new to coins, if you're not new to precious metal coins, gold is your answer. And you need to buy them, I would argue, half sovereigns are okay, sovereigns or Britannias. So you've got Britannia's of 1 ounce, and then you've got the sovereign, which is significantly less ounces, and a half sovereign. They're all good things to have.
there's a lot of people sort of within the prepping community, in particular in the United States and also in Canada, but in other places around the world, who think that there might be some kind of problem with the fiat currency, paper cash, paper money, in other words. And they do have some silver because it's not such a high value. So, as you say, approximately £460 for a sovereign. But, if you're going to be buying some shopping or a tank of fuel and there was some problem with cash, you wouldn't be wanting to hand over a sovereign. How would you get your change back if fiat currency's gone out the window? So some people will advocate having some silver coins, probably in the form of Britannias, which are of a lower value. So you could hand over something like a silver Britannia, buy a tank of fuel, some groceries, whatever it might be, if they were willing to do that. And I think that's why a lot of people do have it. The other thing, of course, about silver is that there is some speculation that it is running out because it is an industrial metal and it's used a lot in circuitry, computers, and it's used in other industrial ways as well. And I have heard you talked about the fact that silver is probably undervalued quite a lot. There are a lot of people who do buy and sell and stack the sort of the gold and silver, who reckon that silver could actually at some future point go up considerably. But as you say, these are not reasons why you would necessarily buy it. I mean, if you happen to have some silver and it happens to go through the roof, great, that means that your buying power is even higher. But I wanted to come back to something that you mentioned there, which was the spot price. And a lot of people might not know what that means, especially when it comes into relation to gold. So could you explain a little bit about what the spot price is?
Sure. The spot price is the internationally agreed price. It's internationally agreed. I have to be very careful because it's you could find there's premiums and discounts on things, but generally speaking, the spot price is what is agreed globally. In the morning of any given working day. Let's say the spot price in dollars. Let's say that it's $2,500 for an ounce of gold, and that's the spot price. Now, what the dealers do, your traders, what they actually do is they then sell their coins or their bullion at spot plus 1%, 2%, or 3%. So your coins that you get from the mint, and even the Royal Mint do this, incidentally. Let's say that you want to you phone up and you want to buy a sovereign, which has agreed spot price that morning. You will buy it at a 2 or 3% premium, more than that, it's because they have to make their turn, and when you sell it back, they will probably buy back at spot minus 1%, 2%, or 3%. In some cases, 5%. So there's a bid and offer spread. It's called a bid and offer spread, if you will. But that's the same with a stock or bond or share price. There's a buying price and a selling price. And the spread normally is about 5 or 6% on stocks and shares and stuff like that. Your stockbroker, there's two prices. And that's historic. That's been going for a long time. If you buy quite a big stock, if you buy if a friend of mine the other day, he bought £1 million worth, £1 million worth. Well, you get very close to spot on that, because the dealer is quite happy to only make 1% on that. He's still making a living. Yeah. And of course, the selling price is important. You want to sell at spot. Find a trader who tries to sell at spot. Nobody can guarantee this, incidentally. They say, oh, well, we buy back at spot. They can't guarantee that. What they do is say, it is our practice to buy back at spot, and we can show historically that's what we've done. But they can't guarantee it because nobody knows what the world price market, world prices might be, the circumstances in the world might be. But most of my recommended people on my website, or my special recommended people, will buy back at spot. And they have bought back at spot if anybody wants to sell. And because it's all very well, everybody Jim, everybody wants to buy at a good price. Oh, let's buy it. Oh, sovereigns. I know there's somebody here who will sell me sovereigns at, a little bit of a cheaper price. So I'm going there, aren't I clever? Not quite as simple as that. What happens when you want to sell? And there's one dealer I know, there's one trader who charged 5% deduction on repurchase.
Yeah.
So in years to come, you're taking quite a heavy hit. It's not just about the buying price, it's about the selling price, and you have to take all these things into consideration. And on my website, you'll find them. Mine's an independent website. It's an independent website. But,
well, we're going to talk about the website in just a second. I want to point out
that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you are, I mean, for the avoidance of any doubt, you're a former member of the European Parliament, you're a former British military officer, you are a former fund manager. I mean, you know what you're talking about, and you've been doing this a long time. I think one of the other things that sometimes people make the mistake of doing is they'll buy, sometimes they might go on to different places and they might sort of buy kind of unique coins or very shiny coins. In actual fact, most of the people that are buying gold, for example, as an investment, will buy used sovereigns. They might come a little bit tarnished, but that's not a problem. You don't want to be polishing them up because you could devalue them. You leave them in that state because it's the worth of the gold that you're really buying. But I mean, your website in itself, it's a pretty dynamic website. I think you said to me just before we went to record, it's now the prominent one in the UK, or is it worldwide? Just clarify.
It's the biggest. What I can claim, I think, somebody's claimed my producer who knows about these matters. It's about the number crunch. It's the biggest independent site in Great Britain. It's the biggest the most comprehensive independent site in this country. There are lots of other good websites, and I have links on the website to them so that you can go elsewhere and look at other websites, and that's fine and good. And I encourage people to do that. But they are really one dealer. It's a dealer's website. It's a trader's website. And some of them are very good indeed, believe me. But they are only going to recommend, obviously, that you do your trade with them. Mine has no allegiance particularly to one trader or another, although I do sometimes nuance that trader for you if you want that trader for you if you want that. And of course, if you phone any of these traders or talk to these traders, if you feel you're not getting a fair shake, and you mention my name, they will tremble. They will tremble in case I take them off my site, and that's the last thing they want to do. There have occasionally been cases where people haven't felt they've been traded, and I've drilled down and I've picked the phone up and I've spoke to the chief executive, and he's given me a very satisfactory explanation of what the circumstances were. But he's made an ex gratia payment in order to keep me happy and the subscriber happy. Very rare.
I mean, that's
very rare, but it has happened.
The fact that you can do that shows the level of credibility on your website, and the fact that you have that personal reputation as being somebody that you don't mess with. In other words, do things right, and obviously you've got that wherewithal to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put links into the website, but I want to go back to clarify why people would want to actually get some coins, whether it's gold, whether it's silver, And it's not the domain of the super wealthy at all. Ordinary people can go into, you can talk about some of these different sites where you can actually buy gold coins if you want to, the ones that are maybe featured on your website, for example, and talk us through the process about how you do that. And I mean, the purposes of doing it is to protect your wealth, isn't it? It's you're quite clear it's not an investment. This isn't to sort of make lots of money in 10 years' time or 5 years' time, although that could theoretically happen depending on the gold prices and depending on what's going on in the economy. But there's a lot of people that worry that the whole fiat currency system is pretty insolvent and could crash. And gold is a way to protect that. It gives people purchasing power regardless of what happens to the paper side of things. So once again, an ordinary person that might have, let's just say they've got £400 or £500, and they're worried about how the inflation, food inflation, rising fuel costs, energy costs, that type of thing might be happening. Talk us through the process about how somebody would go about buying a gold sovereign, for example.
Well, what you do is you phone up the dealer or somebody who's after your business. It might be bullion by post, for example. And just picking one out of the air. They're on my website. I don't know anybody there personally at bullion by post, but this is what they do. This is the market they're after. They're after people buying 2 or 3 sovereigns, and it's delivered the next day. It's very crisp. It's very clean. You won't get a particularly keen price because it's too small a deal for them. But they're perfectly legitimate. They're perfectly okay, and they want your business. It's a question really of fiat currency, paper money is degraded on an annual basis, and it has been since the beginning of paper money. Give you an example of that. The dollar. Now, the dollar is the world's reserve currency. The dollar is the holy Yankee dollar, all right, which is on Skid Row at the moment. Now, Nixon took America off the gold standard in 1971 to fight the war in Vietnam, where you needed to print money to do that. And he did a deal with the oil-producing countries to say this will be a reserve currency, and your dollar's still okay. It's sound. It's not just backed by gold anymore in 1971, and this is what Nixon told the world. Now, in 1971, if you take that paper dollar, it's purchased from 1971 to the present day. What is its purchasing power today? And the answer to that is about 8 cents. That's what it will buy compared with a 1971 dollar. Now your gold reflects that. So your gold dollar or your gold sovereign, depending where you are, but it doesn't matter. If it's gold, the same amount of gold there, it will buy you exactly pretty much what it bought you in 1971. And as we said earlier, in 1905. Or 1806, and let's see, for the man on the Clapham omnibus, let's look at the staple commodity of the 19th century, which I think we could all argue was bread. The price of bread. Bread was the big thing. That was the staple diet, bread, certainly in Western Europe. Let's just take the United Kingdom, because we're dealing with the United Kingdom. They're the figures I know off the top of my head. So the price, when we went back to the gold standard after the Napoleonic Wars, and the sovereign came in, that was, I think, about 1819. 1820. It was a couple of years after the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, and we went back on that, the sovereign. Now, because it was gold and you can't devalue gold, the politicians can't degrade gold. They can degrade paper. So a loaf of bread in 1820 cost exactly the same in 1913. It didn't go up in price because the politicians couldn't fiddle with it, and the central banks couldn't fiddle with it. Well, they fiddled with it a little bit, but we came off the gold standard in 1913 to fight another bloody, unnecessary, stupid war. Don't get me down the rabbit hole of war, because everybody knows my views on this. So it stayed the same. I think your viewers would argue that the staple commodity of the 20th century would be oil, and a barrel. The same amount of gold was needed to buy a barrel of oil in 1900 as it is today, broadly speaking. There's been a few spikes in the last couple of years, actually, but don't let's worry too much about that. Broadly speaking, oil and gold are correlated in price, and they're the same. You get years when there's wars and trouble in the Middle East when that balance disappears a little bit, but generally speaking, that's the case. So that's the main thing. So what is your small saver? He's just the same as the big saver. Small savers and big savers. I mean, if you've got a great big house and you drive a Rolls Royce and your kids are at public school, that's your world that you live in. Most of us don't live in that world. Most of us live in the ordinary sort of middle England kind of world. And it's just important for us to be able to afford our holiday and our new Ford and so on and so forth, and have the house painted. Most of us are like that. Most of us are those sort of people. And so it's important to you that whatever savings you've got is not degraded. Now, if you want to speculate, if you've got a strong stomach for speculation, you could wait till the stock market crashes and then pile into the stock market. You could take a flutter on Bitcoin. There's all sorts of things you can do. But generally speaking, as far as we are concerned, broadly speaking, you and I and our families, our extended families and our friends, generally speaking, are probably at the stage of life, not as old as me, but generally speaking, broadly speaking, they want to preserve what they've got. They want to preserve what they've got. They're not interested in making a buck here or making a buck there. They want to preserve their savings. They might keep a little bit of different money aside for speculative purposes. And if they're small businessmen, they're speculating on the fact that they've got a small business. My goodness me, that's hard enough at the moment without anything else. But if you want to just store that wealth for a long-term rainy day, it's not for next year, not for the year after, or even the year after that necessarily. I would say a 5-year view. And that's the same, incidentally, as you know, Jim. I know you know this. It's the same with stocks, shares. If you're not buying for 5 years, if you're not going to hold that portfolio for 5 years, for God's sake, don't do it. Exactly. 5 years is too short a time. So 5 years, we would argue in equity is 7. And I was in the City of London for many years. Certainly, if people wanted an equity portfolio, so if you haven't got 7 years, put it under the mattress. But if you've got 7 years, then you can ride out the ups and the downs of these things. So don't buy gold for sort of this Christmas or next Christmas or even the Christmas after that. It's something that you stuff it away and you wait for those hard times. And hard times are coming. Oh, hard times are coming. Believe me. And I've
you and I have had some fantastic interviews over the course of the last years, and we've often talked about the hard times that are coming. And you said something quite interesting, and I took a note of it, and that is that the government can't really touch it, or it's a difficult thing for them to manipulate and control. But is there anything in history where governments have kind of wanted to grab people's gold or silver? Can you think?
Yes. The first time when it was sort of fairly high profile was in France, when the collapse of the assignat, their currency at the time, which was, of course, as you will know, the assignat and livre and these things, but actually engineered by one of your countrymen, John Law. You're a bloody...
So is my countryman, isn't it?
You're a dodgy bunch up there. Anyway, John Law had this wonderful idea that you could actually print money, and he put it into the great sort of Louisiana Purchase and stuff like that. And, of course, that bubble popped. That all went pop. And then, of course, the Parisian government found itself with no money, so they wanted gold. And the police, the French police in Paris, were digging up people's gardens, trying to find out where they might have hidden gold. So... yeah, the answer is yes. And of course, we know the FDR in the 1930s, he needed gold. He wanted gold. Now, he didn't confiscate the gold. He was canny when it came to that. He made people sell the gold to the government at a set price, whatever it was, $20. You had to give it back. So $20, and he then revalued it to $35 within a year or so. That's a piece of chicanery. There's still statues to this guy. This guy was a criminal.
Franklin Roosevelt. That's exactly right. And he forced people. He said, "Well, if you keep it, you can't use it. It'll be illegal, and you've got to hand it in." And then he went and revalued it up and made a fortune. I mean, talk about ripping people off.
I mean, absolutely funny. Now, Alistair MacLeod's done a very good piece on this on his Substack. He charges for his advice. I don't charge for mine. Perhaps I'm wrong. I don't know. But he probably needs the money. He's another Scot, of course. He's not going to do anything for nothing. I'm having a go at your lot today. No, only kidding. Alistair MacLeod said, in 1932-33, when Roosevelt said, gimme, 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 it was a very different nation. It was a patriotic nation, the American dream. They trusted their governments, broadly speaking. And so they did the decent thing. and it was at a guaranteed price. He didn't actually steal it. Now we're in a circumstance. If the Americans wanted to do that, because obviously America's broke, they've got 32 trillion pounds worth of debt, and that's just what we know about, and it's going up 1 trillion every 100 days. So of course they could come and say, "Oh, we've got to get gold because there's none in the New York Fed because we've got rid of it all." As the Germans now found out when they wanted their gold back, it wasn't there. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, this is a problem. And Alistair MacLeod's addressed it, and I think addressed it very well as he does. He's got a huge brain. He's entitled to charge money for it. He's got a bigger brain than me. But his view is that if the American government tried to do that, it would be in breach of property laws. It would be a huge breach of property law, which means there are something like $200 trillion worth of investment, overseas investment in America. And if he confiscated that, bad enough confiscating the Russian money, but if he confiscated the whole world's money invested in America, if he thinks there's a run on the dollar now, you ain't seen nothing yet, and so there will be a complete collapse. So you're quite right to say, Kes, can the government steal it from you, as well as a burglar? The answer to that is yes. But bearing in mind that most of the Americans that gave up that voluntarily gave it up through patriotism, and I don't think that would happen today. What's the technical position? What's the technical position on that? How do they know you've got the gold? How do they know? Let's say you buy £10,000 worth of gold coins. How do they know you've got it? It's delivered. You take delivery. And I just pop in here. If you can take delivery, always take delivery. If you can take it, take it. Don't leave it anyway, because you've always got a counterparty risk. So if you can take it away, take it away. It's much better in your hand or put somewhere by your own hand than anywhere else. That's really number one rule. So what are we going to do with that? Well, for the first year or two, gold traders have to, I think I'm right in saying now, if it's over £10,000 worth of purchase, they have to keep a record, the gold trader, which can be inspected by HMRC or the Treasury, call it what you like. They can inspect and say, so Godfrey Bloom's got £10,000 worth of gold because he bought some last year. And we know. And so if they ever want to confiscate it, they've got to knock on the door and they've got a piece of paper to say, we know that you bought £10,000 worth of gold last year because we've got a credit note to say, we've got a note that's registered with the Treasury. We want it. And then we take that from there. Don't knock on my door, please, anybody from the government, and do that. I will shoot you. But that can happen. Now, after 2 years, then they're going to have to draw back 2 years. Who bought gold in the last 2 years? Or the last 3 years? And when you get to 5, who bought gold 5 years ago? It's getting very, very difficult to locate. Plus the fact, of course, what is the average gold in specie holding by your man on the Clapham omnibus? It's tiny. It's immeasurable. It's something like 0.1% of your, less than that. It's less than that. It's immeasurable. So it's not worth them doing it. Nobody's got any. The only people who have a stash of gold coins are really, really clever little shits like me.
And the thing is, I mean, how on earth could they prove that you still had it? I mean, it's untrackable, really. I mean, you couldn't do it. But I think it goes back to the earlier point that people really should be in possession of it themselves, because if it's in a vault somewhere, I don't mean the types of vaults you're talking about. I'm talking about these big bullion vaults that the governments know exactly where they are. And really, at the end of the day, the governments are especially now, but they have been for a long time, really untrustworthy. So you wouldn't want them trying to access it. But go back to the point: why would people want to have a few gold coins or even a few silver coins? Well, it's like a hedge. It's a sort of a little buffer that if fiat currency suddenly goes belly up and there is a worldwide economic crash, you've got something tangible that people understand. And gold has always been, from time immemorial, to be, regardless of what's printed on it, gold is gold and silver is silver, but gold in particular. And as you said, you could go to India, you could go to any of these far-flung places, and they would accept it. Now, it might be that people might need to, they might need to charter a flight or a boat, or if they wanted to get out in a hurry, if part of their preparations to go somewhere in safety, maybe there's a war on, maybe there's a third world war about to go. Well, gold will get them to where they need to be, and it will also secure food and accommodation and lots of things for at least a period of time, for at least as long as you've got currency or gold coins there to back it up. So once again, if somebody goes onto your website and they're thinking, do you know what, I quite like the idea of having, a few gold sovereigns. Maybe they could buy one every quarter, for example. That's not without, merit. Maybe buy one every quarter. So, they go onto your website, and you would say that there's a sort of a category where people can go onto that and they can actually find. So, for example, bullion by post. That's quite a well-known one for small investors, small traders, for people that want to sort of just buy the odd coin here and there. And it's a fairly simple process, isn't it? You would simply get on there, probably follow the link, and then you would see a selection of different coins. But there's lots of different coins on bullion by post, for example. But you would always, because it's internationally recognized, sovereigns or Britannias would be the best ones to go for, yeah?
Sovereigns and Britannias particularly. Half sovereigns are fine too for the very small investor. It's very slick and it's very easy. You can buy online. There was a case that came to me a little while ago. I can't remember the circumstance. It'll be confidential anyway. But there'd been a little old lady, classic sort of little old lady, and she'd collected sovereigns well before it became fashionable per se, or the clever thing to do. It was just something actually that a lot of people did. If you go back 3 or 4 generations, it wasn't a sort of a clever thing to do, particular thing. Everybody had a gold sovereign here, a gold sovereign in the cufflink box, or in the makeup box, or something like that, and half sovereigns and sovereigns. And she'd been doing it for so long. I think she was well into her 90s, and she'd been doing it something for like 30 or 35 years or 40 years. And she had quite a bucket load of these damn things. And of course, it was quite important. I mean, it worked out at several £1,000s, and the family were very pleased, and they got in touch with me. They got to be very careful how I handle this particular answer. But it was miles out of the inheritance tax domain. It was miles away from that. I mean, she had a bungalow or something like that. Well, you can't hide that from the greedy tax man, the thieving bugger. But the tea caddy, Keir Starmer is going to have to whistle Dixie for that one. Or it was the other guy, that funny little chap we've all now forgotten, funny little chap.
Sunak. Sunak.
Yeah, that's the guy. Oh, my mind's brain. I'm doing a bit of a Joe Biden here. But if you can put, let's say you're in your early 40s and you're good old middle England, doing your best, living a life of quiet desperation with you and your family. If you bought a sovereign a month, or even a half, or a sovereign every 2 months, or half sovereigns, whatever you wanted to do, online, that would be a good thing to do, because if you buy it and forget about it, like we used to do Green Shield stamps, for anybody who remembers that, and you'd collect them for 10 years, and then you buy a new steam iron or whatever it happened to be. You can tuck all these things away, and they're there in the same way and in the same style, and for the same reasons that you buy fire insurance for your house. You don't really expect it to burn down. You don't really expect. You insure all your furniture and your pictures or whatever it happens to be. But I mean, in my house now, there's nothing anybody's going to. They nick the TV. They're going to nick it. And I live out in the sticks, so nobody steals anything out here. The only crime out here is farmers burning down their own barns, but that's Yorkshire. But I mean, nobody nicks anything really. But you have to. People insure. I mean, I have got a 50-year no-claim bonus, but I insure. I have to insure my car by law. But I don't insure because I expect to claim on it. But you have these things just in case. Your sovereigns are just in case.
And that's the big thing. Yeah, sorry, I'll come back to that. But that's exactly why so many people are actually buying gold and silver. And of course, one of the other things about a half sovereign is you can buy half sovereign for less than you would for a full sovereign. I mean, what sort is the going rate, roughly speaking, for a half sovereign at the moment?
It would be about 260 quid. I mean, it changes. Actually, the prices change. Would you believe? In this field, they change every 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
But the point is, give me an example of that. And I know I don't need to, because I know that your followers, your subscribers are pretty wick. Otherwise, they wouldn't be following you. You know, they'd be watching the BBC, wouldn't they? Brain dead. But let's just assume. Now,
they're a great bunch. I've got to say, my followers are some of the smartest people around.
I know.
I sometimes ask them something or get their opinion on something. Oh my goodness, they are so good at putting out comments and they're like links.
The pub. Mine are the same. If I don't know something, want to know something, you know, I either don't know who can fix a sort of this, or who knows how to do about this down the pub.
Yeah.
I know somebody will know. They will know, all right? And it's the same with followers. If I don't know something's weird. If I put it out on my channel, there'll be 2 or 3 people who tell me how that works, because it's outside my field. But what is I think important is, and this I'm sure that a lot of your followers will know this by personal experience. When you've got mum, let's just say that mum is 61, 62, all right? And the hip's getting more and more and more painful, and she needs a hip replacement or a knee replacement or dad or whatever it happens to be. And the waiting list is drifting into a year. And she can barely walk. She's on sticks, and she's otherwise likes to be an active woman or an active dad doing the garden. You could go to a London clinic. It's going to be 15 grand. And I know from this personally, because my sister-in-law just had one. She suffered in pain for months and months and months. In the end, and they're Yorkshire. By God, they're mean too. Leaving the other side. Richer than me, but not going to be. But how much? How much? They're meaner than your lot. And so, anyway.
And that's saying something, eh?
And in the end, she went and had it done. That was it. Did London clinic. They just do hips, whip, new hip, experts there, because that's what they do. That's their field. And my wife is a physiotherapist, so she beasted her as well to do the exercises. Bang. She's walking around, no pain, no pain. The only way they could do that, and this is where it's so unfair, and I get worked up about this. It's over. We're pretty middle class people, and you know we can do this. That is grotesquely unfair on somebody who is really struggling on relatively low incomes, who've worked all their lives. Indigenous population, if I can say that now without being locked up by Keir Starmer, are getting a raw deal. Now, there's no point in going boo-hoo. What can you do? There's nothing you can do, because we're run by criminals and crooks. They're all the same. Doesn't matter what rosette they turn up with. They're all the same. You can only look after yourself. And that's where these half sovereigns go on. If you can make yourself do them, sacrifice a little bit, perhaps eating out. Do you really need to eat out that much? Nah, you don't really, do you? Better putting it into the tea caddy. So if you need that operation, if you need that knee, or you need that, whatever it happens to be, it's there. It's an insurance policy. It's an insurance policy. That's all it is.
It's an insurance policy. It's a hedge. It's an emergency fund that will never really devalue because it's gold. And
exactly.
And I think those are some fantastic reasons as to why people are actually looking at doing this, and they are doing it. There are many people across the United States, Canada, and indeed the world, who are every so often buying some kind of coin, whether it's a half sovereign or if it's a sovereign, or even a little bit of silver, maybe a Britannia. There's Krugerrands. I mean, there's Canadian maples. I mean, there's all sorts of currency for different nations. But you know, having that international recognition, I should say, for Britannias and for sovereigns and half sovereigns, I think is really, really important, because none of us know, and we're approaching the end segment. We're going ever so slightly over, but you know, to sum it up, I mean, how do you see the economy at this point in time, and why? Because this is directly relevant to what we've been talking about in this particular interview. I mean, things aren't really good out there in the economic realm. There's a lot of debt. There's a lot of bubbles. You know, do you think this American election could affect the markets in any particular way? Do you think the globalists are planning on pulling the plug, crashing the economy? I mean, do you think these things are real? And do you think people should be paying more closer attention to what's actually going on and maybe looking to buy some gold and silver as a bit of a hedge, a bit of an insurance policy? What do you think?
Well, timing is everything, of course. Timing is everything. Nobody can actually get the timings correct. And I've been in the financial world and since 1967, I think it was, in some form or another. Now, I'm always right about what is going to happen because it's obvious. You do not need the brains of an archbishop to know what is going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen. And I've been right about almost everything for many, many years. However, the timing I have not necessarily been right on. So I've made mistakes. I thought the banking system would totally have collapsed by now. I reckoned it would be 2021. So I was wrong on the time. It's collapsing bit by bit, and the debt gets more and more. International debt matters. But then what is interesting, who really knows what's happening to world global economy? Who really knows the figures? It's the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland and central banks, because they're the first to get, they're the first receiver of all technical economic information. And they've got their foot in the political camp as well. So nobody knows better than they. And I used to be very close to the heart of that world in the late 80s and early 1990s, when I was working for one of the biggest equity managers in the world in those days. It was the Warburg Empire. So we knew before the man on the Clapham omnibus finds out about it, it's already happened. It's already too late. What are all the central banks buying today? Gold. Who's accumulating gold in massive numbers? And the Polish bank, the Russian banks, the Iranian banks, the Chinese banks are all acquiring gold, and they have been for some time. If they're buying it, it's good enough for me, and it's good enough for anybody watching, because they know. They're not buying stocks. They're not buying American bonds. They're not buying T-bills. They're not buying gilts. They're not buying commercial property. So it's gold or silver.
Well, I mean, I think we there's the old saying, follow the money, and this is making a lot of sense, certainly from my point of view, and I'm sure many of the hundreds of thousands of people that follow this channel will be watching this, will be thinking the same thing. So once again, remind us of the website. We will be putting links into it, Godfrey. What is the website?
It's easy. It's Godfrey Bloom .uk /gold/.
All right. Well, we'll put links up to that.
The thing is, there, it does require some diligence. It's as I say, it's the biggest in the country, independent. People have a habit, bless them, and I suppose it's natural, I probably do this kind of thing myself, of getting in touch with me or emailing me and saying XYZ. The answer is on that website. Believe me, it's there if you take the trouble. But it rewards effort. It rewards effort. So don't do anything until you've spent some time on it, and you'll find that every question then has been answered. If you're a big investor, and there's no point in pretending that you will have some big people watching as well, and the principles are all the same for them. If it's big, then you have to think particularly, and I'll say now, everybody there is very good for small holders. There's only one exception, and that is GBP, Gold Bullion Partners. They're for bigger people, because you get, when you get it, if you're going to do a lot of money, if you're going to do 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds, you'll get a big shot who will look after you. His name is Nick Ward. It's all on the website, and he will take you through a much more, he will ask questions of you, and he'll say, what do you want? What's your time horizon? And he'll take a little bit more trouble to find out. The prices don't vary very much, although if it's a big deal, you'll get a better price. But the point is, if you want to talk to somebody, if you really need a counter executive rather than just buying a sovereign a month or something like that, you need to go to them. Horses for courses. It's just like a meal. Fish and chip shop's all right. Claridge's is okay too. It depends what you're feeling and how much you got in your pocket.
Well, look, on that note, we will bring it to a close. But I have to say, Godfrey, it's always great to see you on this channel. You are a beacon of wisdom and common sense. And I would thoroughly encourage people to follow Godfrey Bloom on his channel. The links will be in the description. And to check out his website, because as he said, this is accessible to everybody. Every working person, every ordinary person out there could benefit from having a little bit of gold, maybe a little bit of silver as well, and try to take possession of it wherever you can, especially if it's gold. And that way you know where it is when you need it. And once again, it's been a pleasure to have you here, Godfrey. Thank you so much indeed. We'll need to get you on quite soon.
Lovely to be here. Always enjoyable.
All right. Yeah, indeed. Well, to all the people out there watching this, this is it's something that we need to be aware of. It's something that we need to be paying attention to, because the markets are important. It affects everybody in every way. But I'm very grateful to each and every one of you for sharing this content. As I always like to remind you, you guys are the real stars of this show. This is Jim Ferguson, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye for now.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I'll automatically share it with you. So, surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.